Recently, my players got stuck in a city, and that game session served to remind me of how challenging it can sometimes be to run adventures in cities, even when the city was only supposed to be a hub that would serve as a stopover point for further adventures. So today we're going to talk about that story. I'm going to tell you a bit about that story and some of the lessons I think we can take away from it. But before we jump in, there is something that I need to say about recent events. My prayers are with Charlie Kirk's family and everyone affected by this horrible event. Charlie was a husband, a father, and a patriot, and a fellow brother of mine in Christ who championed the idea of people coming together to peacefully reason out their differences through discussion. And he was murdered for it. There are no words to express the magnitude of that evil act. His murder is an abomination, and there is no justification for acts of violence like this, no matter how much you disagree with someone. Now, I fully realize that making a public statement like this may jeopardize my livelihood, my business. But as I was thinking this over, I had a quote rattling around in my mind. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. So I had to say something, and if that means that you don't like me now, well, that's okay. Okay. On to the story. I was running my Eberron campaign, and the group was hunting for a cauldron, the Cauldron of Chaos. It was a MacGuffin they had to get, and they were going to the Great Crag, a city in Droaam. That was their lead about where they could find this cauldron that had been stolen away from them by some spies, a Medusa specifically. So they had traveled by airship all the way from Mararhold to Droaam, and they were arriving in the Great Crag. And now, I like places to feel alive. I like the world to feel like a real living place to my players. And so when they arrive in a new city or a new place especially, I go to a little bit of a length to describe it to them, to set the scene, to make it feel cool and immersive to my players. I describe the general layout, the ruins from the ancient goblin civilization. I described this arena where gladiatorial contests were taking place. The different citizens, the troops, the monsters, all of the populace that they would find, that they were seeing there and observing there as they entered. But while I'm doing that, and while I was setting the scene and while I was running the game session, I knew that they were there to find this cauldron. And so I had a plan. I had breadcrumbs, so to speak, for them to follow. I had clear plot hooks. I knew that they were going to start looking for the cauldron, that they were going to start asking around for leads, maybe discreetly, but at least trying to find some stuff. So I had a spy master that they could get leads to lead them toward her so that she could tell them the next step and give them another lead that would help them go down the path of finding out where this cauldron ultimately ended up. So I didn't go into this unprepared. I knew what was kind of going on, and I had a plan for how my players could stay on track, so to speak, and keep on journeying along that objective of finding the cauldron. The problem is that the city itself was a distraction. In particular, I remember the arena being a very big distraction. If I remember correctly, my players were hypothesizing that perhaps they could fight in the arena and win their way up through the ranks because one of the persons in the arena was a disgraced warlord. They were hoping that somehow maybe if they fought in the arena that they could fight this warlord or somehow get into his good graces, that he might serve as a contact that would give them a lead toward finding the cauldron. There was this convoluted, to a certain degree, scheme and plan of how that might possibly help further their goals. And of course, I couldn't help mention to my players that if they wanted to fight through the arena, we'd probably be looking at a whole lot of combat, end-on-end combat, and that, I don't know, if they wanted to do that, that was fine, but just be aware that if you want to do this, this is what this is going to look like. Fighting in an arena is combat after combat after combat, right? And some groups love that sort of thing. Other groups prefer not to just have straight combat all the time. All styles of play are fair. I just wanted to be forthright with my players of what this would look like if they chose to go that route. But the end of the story, the moral of the story here is that despite my breadcrumbs, despite my clear plot hooks, the city itself was a distraction. My describing all of these cool things, especially the arena, proved to be a distraction. And it led to them discussing other ways, other routes that they might take to finding the cauldron, even though I'd already made it pretty clear of at least one way that they could pursue. And I don't inherently have a problem with my players solving the problem through different methods, different mechanisms. Like if they didn't take my plot hooks, that's fine. And they wanted to do something else to find out where the cauldron is, I'm open to that possibility. It's not necessarily that I had a problem with that. It's more that the game session kind of in a way felt to me like it was devolving into a quagmire of very little progress and more discussing what they might do as opposed to taking action. Now, I think my players still had fun. Like I saw them, I was observing them, I'm doing my DM thing, and I think they enjoyed the game session, but from my perspective as a game master, I really felt that I probably could have done a better job or that the game session could have been better perhaps. And fortunately, they did not decide to go shopping, because that would have been like the ultimate nail in the coffin. So after the game session and thinking all of this over, it made me start to wonder and think of things that I might have done wrong and what I could have done better to make the game session, well, improved in my opinion. But that's assuming that it was even a problem, because I think my players had fun. I mean, maybe they had fun, and perhaps I'm just overanalyzing this whole thing. Problem number one. Maybe I was too descriptive. Like I said, I like to paint the picture. I like to set the scene. I want my world to feel real, alive, and immersive. But here's the problem. Information and details and something being interesting is a distraction. Some players interpret that description as a clue, a cue from the game master that something is important and that they should go investigate it. So I think a solution to that, if I had chosen to implement it, would be to make my descriptions more shorter and more vanilla and perhaps not so interesting. This would signal to the players that this thing isn't actually that important and that they shouldn't pay too much attention to it. Of course, the downfall to that is that your world and that scene and that place becomes less interesting, it becomes less immersive, and it seems less real. So there's definitely a trade-off there that is worth considering. And my next thought is that maybe I prepared this city too much, or in this case, I suppose I improvised the details too much. Because the thing is that the more you prepare a city, the more you know about it, that is going to come out in your descriptions. It's going to come out in the way you portray certain things. And if your players perceive that you've really prepared a place really well, they're going to think that it's important. And they're going to be like, we should stay here, we should investigate, we should do things here, as opposed to it just being a hub, which in this case, this city was supposed to just be a hub where they would get the next lead and then go on their adventure. In generally speaking, I think you probably only need 3 of any given thing. So 3 NPCs, 3 locations they might visit, like a tavern, an inn, or a place where they might buy supplies. Now, truth be told, I didn't even plan this city out that well. All I really had were the high-level details, the high-level information about the Great Crag, and then I was improvising on the fly a good amount of what was transpiring and what I was describing to them. But generally speaking, I tend to be fairly good at improvising that sort of thing, details on the fly and all of that, so it probably communicated and portrayed to my players that I had prepared a whole lot about it, which then clued them in that all of this stuff was really important and that they should investigate more. And my third thought was that maybe as a game master, I could have been more leading or directive. I could have used word or clues that hinted at them that this was just a temporary place that they're only supposed to stay for a little bit, but that they should keep moving and go and keep getting on with their adventure somewhere else. That they weren't meant to stay here too long, dilly-dally, so to speak. I could tell them like this great city here has lots of people and probably spy masters. This might be a great place to get leads that will take you to where the cauldron actually is. The problem is that I don't like to do that sort of thing. I don't like directing my players in a certain way or make it seem like I'm limiting their freedom or that I'm pushing them to do a certain thing. I'd rather they just explore that scenario themselves, that they like figure out what they're going to do without any guidance from me. That's just my style as a game master. I like to paint the picture, set the scene, and step back and let my players do their thing and figure it out on their own. I like to give them that agency and that freedom, and I don't like guiding them in certain directions too much. I give plot hooks and I give all of these things, but at the end of the day, I like my players decide what they're going to do. Now, as I said, they fortunately did not go shopping, but if they had, the way to handle shopping in a situation like this, in a big city like this, is not to role play out every encounter with a merchant, to handle all the haggling and things like that. The best way to handle shopping is to say, okay, guys, you're going shopping. That's great. If it's in the book and it's like this level of thing or below, or it's worth this amount of gold or below, then it's available in this city. Just go ahead and shop out of the book, spend your part of your resources, and I'll give you like about 10 minutes or so, and then we're going to move on with the adventure. But I don't think the game session was horrible. And in fact, maybe it was an amazing game session. Maybe my players actually loved it and they loved the freedom and the opportunity to explore things and not be pushed in a certain direction. So maybe what I felt was a quagmire was actually really cool for my players. Maybe they loved it, and maybe I'm just crazy. By the way, if you'd like to support the work I do and get a really cool book filled with Fae-themed D&D resources, my Fae-bound Kickstarter is now live. And as of the recording of this video, we're closing in on 1,500 backers. That is so amazing. We're giving you new races such as the Foxkin. Check this dude out. New subclasses like the Pact of the Witch Warlock. By the way, this is probably one of my favorite pieces of artwork yet. And then we have cool creatures such as the Architect and the Geargnaw. Look at these cool cybernetic beaver guys. There are also new Fae-themed game mechanics, magic items, a campaign setting featuring 4 unique Fae courts, and a 12-part adventure arc. If you'd like to learn more and become a backer, click the link down in the description or pinned comment. Don't forget to let me know what you think about running cities and adventures, and if you think I could have done a better job in this city, or if that's just the nature of cities and I shouldn't worry about it too much. And if you'd like to watch another fine DM layer video, click this guy right here. There's probably a button for you to subscribe somewhere, all that kind of cool jazz. And until next time, have a wonderful day and happy game mastering.